Let's move over to other matters now, and it's the end of the road for David Makhura in the Gauteng Legislature. He's been Premier of the Economic Hub since 2014. Under his tenure, how has job creation fared, especially for the youth? Founder of the South African Youth Economic Council, Bonga Makhanya, joins me now to discuss this. Thank you very much for your time this morning, Bonga. And I suppose that is the big question. When you look broadly at the current state of affairs in the province of Gauteng, how would you assess what the Premier was able to do when it came to the support and the upliftment of young people in the province?
No, thank you so much for having us, and greetings to all your listeners. I think, David Makhura's administration has been characterized, to sum it up, as an era of a lack of implementation and an era of no real fundamental change, especially for the lives of young people. I think, youth unemployment is probably sitting at around 40% in the province alone. So that just speaks to the state of hopelessness of young people, but particularly young black people from township and, and the areas of the outskirts of the province. And largely due to the fact that David Makhura has failed to draft and implement a broad strategy that speaks directly to youth economic empowerment, and that speaks directly to changing the lives of young black people when it comes to job opportunities, business opportunities. This is the hub of the economy in terms of the continent. You have some of the biggest mining companies here, but the state has done nothing to take the hands of young people to these big corporations and say, here's a young SMME, here's a youth-owned business, they offer these services. As a critical stakeholder in the province, we want you to support them, creating those type of partnerships. They have SOEs such as the Gauteng Partnership Fund, Gauteng Enterprise Propeller, yet the procurement spend and the budget spend on youth is nowhere to be seen. So, that is the type of leadership style that is resigned now. It's one of little to no sign that they can point to say, these are the young people that we've supported, these are the young people that we have empowered as a province as a result of our administration. They can't point to anyone. And the reason they can't point to anyone is precisely the fact that they do not take, or rather it was an administration that didn't take young people seriously, always reduced to cosmetic exercises, reduced to gimmicks and PR stunts, and thinking of young people as these people that own car washes or run, spaza shops and the likes, and not as people who can actually own businesses in the strategic sectors and be service providers in critical industries, your auditing firms and, your construction firms. There are young people running those small businesses in those industries that should be supported by the state through funding, through business opportunities, but it never happened. Why? Because the state doesn't take young people seriously enough to invest in those type of businesses. They want to, do wreath-laying ceremonies during June 16, and they want to reduce young people to singing and dancing and all sorts of other gimmicks that they always do.
Yeah, I mean, that's very interesting, the points that you've raised. And one listening might argue the point that, what if it's because of the structural inefficiencies that exist at a national level that could have potentially held the Premier back? How does that argument hold water at all?
I mean, to a certain extent. I mean, look, if you look at South Africa's broad macroeconomic policies, it's one riddled with austerity measures, so budget cuts across the board. Maybe you could argue that we can't roll out massive infrastructure spend directed at youth, particularly because we don't receive enough funding from National Treasury and so on and so forth. However, with the little resources that you have, what have you done? You have so many SOEs, strategic entities under your provision as the Premier, as this provincial government. What have you done for youth? How many youth-owned SMMEs that can you say that you've empowered under your administration that had absolutely nothing in terms of resources and business opportunities? But now, after your administration, here they are, there's 100 of them. They are running credible entities. They are running credible businesses that are providing services to other parts of the country now outside of Gauteng. They've not done that with the small resources that they have. The only thing we've seen them do is reinforce the status quo, reinforce the structural inequality that we see in our country, where you have a Santon and a Soweto and an Alex, where black people continue to live in squalor, yet the owners of the means of production remain to be white and white male. But they've not had a deliberate program of action whereby they seek to change that by making black people, young black people, owners of the strategic sectors of the economy, which reside here in Gauteng. So that lack of political will, for me, even with the little resources that they have, is telling. Because if you can't do anything with the small that you have, why then should Treasury trust you with a big infrastructure budget when you've not done anything for youth and marginalized groups in the country? So we judge them based on the small that they have and the willingness that they've shown towards young people, which I don't think is a lot at this point in time. It's
very interesting because Gauteng in 2021 contributed 35% to national GDP. So it's not small that they have, the provincial economy is churning,
yes,
more than any other place in the country. So with that in mind, as Panyaza Lesufi comes in to take the reins, what do you think he should be focusing on in the immediate rather, when it comes to empowering young people, whether it be through job creation or whether it be uplifting small businesses to contribute significantly to the provincial economy?
Well, I think for one, the new premier, whether it is yet to be seen if it will be Panyaza, but if it is, which is most likely, then one, they should start prioritizing, creating deliberate programs within the states in terms of procurement, setting aside budgets across all departments, across all SOEs for youth economic development and youth empowerment. So far, when the state thinks of developing young people, they think about upskilling you, sending you to EPWP programs and so on the likes. But they don't think about, for example, trusting you with a big piece of business within strategic departments, within strategic SOEs, and trusting you with that type of stuff. So Panyaza must create deliberate procurement programs, deliberate budget spend programs aimed at youth and women and people living with disabilities that will empower and create new entrants into the market, create new entrants into the sector. So that's one way of looking at it. The second way is to really build and drive youth ownership in strategic sectors of the economy, in mining. There's nothing that stops the provincial government of funding young people that want to go into mining, young people that want to go into the financial services sector, young professionals who want to start their own auditing firms, young professionals that want to start their own legal services firm. The state must, through the Gauteng Partnership Fund, Gauteng Enterprise Profile, identify young people in strategic sectors and fund those people, support them with resources, human capital if there is such a possibility, where they can then take them to your ARMs, your Sibanye Still Waters that are operating in Gauteng and say, here are young people who will be funded. They can supply these services to your company, and we think as a state, in terms of social cohesion and the social compact, you should support them because they are part of marginalized groups, and for us to drive socio-economic developments, so create deliberate programs within the state to empower them through procurement spend and budget spend, skills development programs, but two, support young people that want to enter critical industries and through funding and job opportunities, and stop reducing and remove us from the idea that when young people want to participate in the economy, it's through creation of car washes and spaza shops, because that's what the township economic bill tries to do now, which is to say focus on Soweto, focus on Alex, whilst Sandton continues to run, whilst the CBD in Sandton, where the financial services are, continues to run and young people are not there. That's where we want to be. That's where young people broadly want to be. They are skilled. They went to WITS, they went to UCT, they went to all sorts of these universities. Now they want to own strategic means of production, and this government of Panyaza Lesufi must enable that and must make sure that it drives that agenda of making sure that young people participate meaningfully in the strategic sectors.
And I suppose one of the big things here, you have mentioned that there are many skilled young people who are sitting without opportunities, but there are also those who didn't get the education that they need to be a driver within the economy. And I suppose that's also one of the issues that need to be addressed here. I suppose it's to his benefit that he comes from the Department of Education on a provincial level, in that he should also focus on making sure that education at any level through to tertiary is accessible and affordably so for youth in the province.
No, certainly. And I think, one of the biggest challenges South Africa actually faces the fact that we have 3 million young people, neither in employment or training, who are sitting at home doing absolutely nothing and probably have nothing to offer to the means of production. One, that points to the failures of the basic education system, that you fail to educate these people at a basic level and now they have nothing to offer to the means of production. But two, it fails to the soft landing mechanisms that the state has made by not providing proper support to TVETs, proper support to skills training programs. So I think Panyaza Lesufa has a huge task on his hand of how does he assist those who can't assist themselves, those who have not gone to VETs, those who have not necessarily attained the skills to run businesses or whatever, who are sitting at home. Because if he doesn't have a plan for those people, what we're going to find is that the crime levels are just going to keep increasing. Yes. Petty crime, these things of people stealing cell phones and running into Ubers, those things are happening because those people have nothing to offer and have no economic opportunities to advance themselves, because the state has failed them at a basic education level, and they continue to fail them now by failing to upskill them through TVETs and other small colleges and training institutions where they can go and find means of employment. So we really need to think of creative ways through the state of how we can support those who can't support themselves, and not just let them to be, because it's going to spill over into what we see now, which is high crime levels and really a state of hopelessness that we're in.
Very, very interesting insights. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Thank you. And let's see what the new Premier will be doing as he comes into power.